All right, good morning, guys. So we've already completed our warm-up writing about someone who is important to you. And we're going to move on now. We reviewed the different types of characterization and dialogue, indirect and direct characterization. Now we're going to look at two examples and just try to answer some questions about the characterization that is happening within these two samples. So the first one is called Black Boy by Richard Wright. It is his memoir, and he's one of my favorite authors. He wrote this book called Native Son that I really like. So I'm going to read you the text sample, and then after that, you guys can have some time to try and answer these questions together. Before I read, though, let's just take a look at the questions so maybe you can think about them as I'm reading to you. So we're asking, what type of characterization is at work here? Direct or indirect? Description or dialogue? Describe Richard's personality. If Richard had taken the same personality test that you took on Tuesday, or for Mr. Ormsby's class, I think you guys took that on Monday maybe, which type do you think he would get and why? Here's the list of types again for reference. So you're kind of just like predicting which one Richard would have gotten if he had taken the test. We're talking about dialogue down here, and then different verbs to indicate dialogue as well. Okay, so I'm going to read through the text sample, and then I will put a link in the document so that you can look at the text in case you don't want to listen to the video again. So at this point in the book, Richard is a teenager. He's struggled his entire life with poverty. His family's moved around the South and the Midwest multiple times because of their lack of money. He currently lives with his uncle and his cousins, and they're not super nice to him. Richard was not put in school for different portions of his childhood, so he was really far behind for his age. But at this point in the book, he's worked really hard and he's about to graduate, and he's being selected to be the speaker at his graduation ceremony. I'm going to start at the top here. I returned to my job at Mrs. Bibbs and bought my school books. My clothing remained little better than rags. Luckily, the studies in the 9th, my last year at school, were light, and during a part of the term, the teacher turned over the class to my supervision, an honor that helped me emotionally and made me hope faintly. It was even hinted that, if I kept my grades high, it would be possible for me to teach in the city school system. During that winter, my brother came home from Chicago. I was glad to see him, though we were strangers, but it was not long before I felt that the affection shown him by my family was far greater than that which I had ever had from them. Slowly, my brother grew openly critical of me, taking his cue from those about him, and it hurt. My loneliness became organic. I felt walled in, and I grew irritable. I associated less and less with my classmates, for their talk was now full of the schools they planned to attend when the term was over. The cold days dragged mechanically, up early and to my job, splitting wood, carrying coal, sweeping floors, then off to school and boredom. The school term ended. I was selected as valedictorian of my class and assigned to write a paper to be delivered at one of the public auditoriums. One morning, the principal summoned me to his office. Well, Richard Wright, here's your speech, he said with smooth bluntness, and shoved a stack of stapled sheets across his desk. What speech? I asked as I picked up the papers. The speech you're going to say the night of graduation, he said. But, Professor, I've written my speech already, I said. He laughed confidently, indulgently. Listen, boy, you're going to speak to both white and colored people that night. What can you alone think of saying to them? You have no experience. I burned. I know that I'm not educated, Professor, I said, but the people are coming to hear the students, and I won't make a speech that you've written. He leaned back in his chair and looked at me in surprise. You know, we've never had a boy in the school just like you before. You've had your way around here. Just how you managed to do it, I don't know. But listen, take this speech and say it. I know it's best for you. You can't afford to just say anything before those white people that night. He paused and added meaningfully, the superintendent of schools will be there. You're in a position to make a good impression on him. I've been a principal for more years than you are, old boy. I've seen many a boy and girl graduate from this school, and none of them was too proud to recite a speech I wrote for them. I had to make up my mind quickly. I was faced with a matter of principle. I wanted to graduate, but I did not want to make a public speech that was not my own. Professor, I'm going to say my own speech that night, I said. He grew angry. You're just a young, hot-headed fool, he said. He toyed with a pencil and looked up at me. Suppose you don't graduate. But I passed my examinations, I said. Look, mister, he shot at me, I'm the man who says who passes at this school. I was so astonished that my body jerked. I had gone to the school for 2 years, and I had never suspected what kind of man the principal was. It simply had never occurred to me to wonder about him. Then I don't graduate, I said flatly. I turned to leave. Say you, come here, he called. I turned and faced him. He was smiling at me in a remote, superior sort of way. You know, I'm glad I talked to you, he said. I was seriously thinking of placing you in the school system teaching, but now I don't think that you'll fit. He was tempting me, baiting me. This was the technique that snared black young minds into supporting the Southern way of life. Look, Professor, I may never get a chance to go to school again, but I like to do things right. What do you mean? I've no money. I'm going to work. Now, this 9th grade diploma isn't going to help me much in life. I'm not bitter about it. It's not your fault. But I'm just not going to do the things this way. Have you talked to anybody about this? He asked me. No. Why? Are you sure? This is the first I've heard of it, Professor, I said, amazed again. You haven't talked to any white people about this? No, sir. I just wanted to know, he said. My amazement increased. The man was afraid now for his job. Professor, you don't understand me, I smiled. You're just a young, hot fool, he said, confident again. Wake up, boy, learn the world you're living in. You're smart, and I know what you're after. I've kept closer track of you than you think. I know your relatives. Now, if you play safe, he smiled and winked, I'll help you go to school, to college. I want to learn, Professor, I told him, but there are some things I don't want to know. Goodbye, he said. I went home hurt but determined. I had been talking to a bought man, and he had tried to buy me. I felt that I had been dealing with something unclean. That night, Griggs, a boy who had gone through many classes with me, came to my house. Look, Dick, you're throwing away your future here in Jackson, he said. Go to the principal, talk to him, take his speech and say it. I'm saying the one he wrote, so why can't you? What the hell, what can you lose? No, I said. Why? I know only a hell of a little, but my speech is going to reflect that, I said. Then you're going to be blacklisted for teaching jobs, he said. Who the hell said I was going to teach? I asked. God, but you've got a will, he said. It's not will. I just don't want to do things that way, I said. He left. 2 days later, Uncle Tom came to me. I knew that the principal had called him. I hear that the principal wants you to say a speech which you've rejected, he said. Yes, sir, that's right. May I read the speech you've written? He asked. Let's see. Certainly, I said, giving him my manuscript. And may I see the one that the principal wrote? I gave him the principal's speech, too. He went to his room and read them. I sat quiet, waiting. He returned. The principal's speech is the better speech, he said. I don't doubt it, I replied, but why did they ask me to write a speech if I can't deliver it? Would you let me work on your speech? He asked. No, sir. Now look, Richard, this is your future. Uncle Tom, I don't care to discuss this with you, I said. He stared at me, then left. The principal's speech was simpler and clearer than mine, but it did not say anything. Mine was cloudy, but it said what I wanted to say. What could I do? I had half a mind not to show up at the graduation exercises. I was hating my environment more each day, and as soon as school was over, I would get a job, save money, and leave. Griggs, who had accepted a speech written by the principal, came to my house each day, and we went off into the woods to practice orating. Day in and day out, we spoke to the trees, to the creeks, frightening the birds, making the cows in the pastures stare at us in fear. I memorized my speech so thoroughly that I could have recited it in my sleep. The news of my clash with the principal had spread through the class, and the students became openly critical of me. Richard, you're a fool. You're throwing away every chance you've got. If they had known the kind of fool boy you are, they would have never made you valedictorian, they said. I gritted my teeth and kept my mouth shut, but my rage was mounting by the hour. My classmates, motivated by a desire to save me, pestered me until I all but reached the breaking point. In the end, the principal had to caution them to let me alone, for fear I would throw up the sponge and walk out. I had one more problem to settle before I could make my speech. I was the only boy in my class wearing short pants, and I was grimly determined to leave school in long pants. Was I not going to work? Would I not be on my own? When my desire for long pants became known at home, yet another storm shook the house. You're trying to go too fast, my mother said. You're nothing but a child, Uncle Tom pronounced. He's beside himself, Granny said. I served notice that I was making my own decisions from then on. I borrowed money from Mrs. Bibbs, my employer, made a down payment on a pearl gray suit. If I could not pay for it, I would take the damn thing back after graduation. On the night of graduation, I was nervous and tense. I rose and faced the audience, and my speech rolled out. When my voice stopped, there was some applause. I did not care if they liked it or not. I was through. Immediately, even before I left the platform, I tried to shunt all memory of the event from me. A few of my classmates managed to shake my hand as I pushed toward the door, seeking the street. Somebody invited me to a party, and I did not accept. I did not want to see any of them again. I walked home saying to myself, the hell with it. With almost 17 years of baffled living behind me, I faced the world in 1925.